Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtupraeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, the discussion between Jad Bharat and Maharaj Rahugana. Text number 14 onwards. Shri Shukavacha etavad anuvad paribhashya pratyudirya munivar uksham shila upratanat निमित्त उपभोगेन कर्मारब्धम व्यपनयन राजयानम अपि तथो वह. Shukdev Goswami said, O Maharaj Parikshit, when King Rahugana chastised the exalted devotee Jad Bharat with harsh words, that peaceful, saintly person tolerated it all and replied properly. Nescience is due to the barley conception, and Jad Bharat was not affected by his false conception. Out of his natural humility, he never considered himself a great devotee, and he agreed to suffer the results of his past karma. Like an ordinary man, he thought that by carrying the palanquin, he was destroying the reactions of his past misdeeds. Thinking in this way, he began to carry the palanquin as before. So this was the humility of Jad Bharat. An exalted devotee of the Lord never thinks that he is a Paramhansa or a liberated person. He always remains a humble servant of the Lord. In all reverse conditions, he agrees to suffer the results of his past life. He never accuses the Lord. He never accuses the Lord of putting him into a distressed condition. These are the signs of an exalted devotee. He never accuses the Lord of putting him into a distressed condition. Not just the Lord, he never accuses anyone else also. Tattyanukampam susamikshemana. When suffering reversed conditions, the devotee always considers that the reversed conditions are the Lord's concessions. He is never angry with his master. He is always satisfied with the position his master offers. In any case, he continues performing his duty in devotion service. Such a person is guaranteed promotion back home, back to Godhead. So this is very, very good example for all of us to consider. In fact, Lord Rishabdev also, he is a supreme personality of Godhead, but people were spitting on him and kicking him, beating him up, but he never retaliated. Never said anything to them. And similarly here, Jad Bharat. So that tolerance has to be there, and that tolerance is not just out of ignorance, it's out of complete knowledge that I'm not this body. That is the first knowledge, first education that we have to have. And then we would be able to tolerate anything. My dear Lord, one who constantly waits for your causeless mercy to be bestowed upon him and who goes on suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, offering you respectful obeisances from the core of his heart, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. Also, not just tolerating, but still offering obeisances and doing his services. Offering obeisances, how? Hridag Vag Vapurvir means from the heart, by the words, Vag, and Vapur by the body. He still worships the Lord, pays obeisances, and just goes on with the services. We read about all the wonderful devotees that we read about, they never retaliated. Never. Even Arjun, Bhagavad Gita, he didn't want to fight. He didn't want to punish the wrongdoers. He wanted to leave the battlefield. It It was Krishna who gave him the right knowledge. I'm not saying Krishna incited him, but Krishna gave him the right knowledge, and then Krishna said, "Do it for me. Do it as a service for me. Become my instrument." And then Arjun fought for the pleasure of Krishna as a devotional service to Krishna. This is a common thread between all exalted devotees. As means, when we start making progress, this thread, this quality of tolerance, humility, it just grows more and more and more and more. What is the limit? There is no limit. None. It just has to keep on growing, because spiritual world, there is no limit. We cannot quantify tolerance or humility or all the wonderful qualities that Krishna talks about in self-realized souls or devotees. There's no quantity. It's unlimited. That's all. Text 15. Shukdev Goswami continued. O best of the Pandu dynasty, Maharaj Parikshit, the king of the Sindhu and Savira states, Maharaj Rahugana, had great faith in discussions of the absolute truth. Being thus qualified, he heard from Jad Bharat that philosophical presentation, which is approved by all scriptures on the mystic yoga process and which slackens the knot in the heart. His material conception of himself as a king was thus destroyed. He immediately descended from his palanquin and fell flat on the ground, with his head at the lotus feet of Jad Bharat in such a way that he might be excused for his insulting words against the great Brahman. He then prayed as follows. So Maharaj Rahugana, he was also a great person, otherwise Krishna wouldn't have arranged for him to meet Jad Bharat like that, and wouldn't have arranged him to get instructed by Jad Bharat. So he understood who Jad Bharat is, not just a palanquin carrier. He's a great self-realized soul, and he just got down from his, and immediately he got down from his palanquin and fell flat on the ground with his head at the lotus feet of Jad Bharat. And he's praying to him. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, this supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science, as it is, appears to be lost. Through the disciplic succession, the royal order was on the same platform as great saintly persons, Raj Rishis. Formerly, they could understand the philosophy of life and knew how to train the citizens to come to the same standard. In other words, they knew how to deliver the citizens from the entanglement of birth and death. When Maharaj Dasharatha ruled Ayodhya, the great sage Vishwamitra once came to him to take away Lord Ramchandra and Lakshman to the forest to kill a demon. When the saintly person Vishwamitra came to the court of Maharaj Dasharatha, the king, in order to receive the saintly person, asked him, Ahishtam yat tat punar janma jayaya. He asked the sage whether everything was going on well in his endeavor to conquer the repetition of birth and death. The whole process of Vedic civilization is based on this point. We must know how to conquer the repetition of birth and death. Maharaj Rahugana also knew the purpose of life. Therefore, when Jad Bharat put the philosophy of life before him, he immediately appreciated it. This is the foundation of Vedic society. So it wasn't that Maharaj Rahugana got upset and he got offended by the answers of Jad Bharat and he immediately ordered to punish him. No, he understood Jad Bharat is not an ordinary person. And that is because Maharaj Rahugana himself must be spiritually advanced. Otherwise one cannot recognize a spiritually advanced person. Learned scholars, Brahmins, saintly persons, and sages who were fully aware of the Vedic purpose advised the royal order how to benefit the general masses. And by their cooperation, the general masses were benefited. Therefore, everything was successful. Maharaj Rahugana attained this perfection of understanding the value of human life. Therefore, he regretted his insulting words to Jadbharat, and he immediately descended from his palanquin and fell down at the lotus feet of Jadbharat in order to be excused and to hear from him further about the values of life known as Brahm Jigyasa, inquiry into the absolute truth. At the present moment, high government officials are ignorant of the values of life. And when saintly persons endeavor to broadcast the Vedic knowledge, the so called executives do not offer their respectful obeisances, but try to obstruct the spiritual propaganda. Thus, one can say that formerly kingly government was like heaven, and the present government is like hell. So this days, government officials, what government officials, even the in the private company officials, big industrialists, they don't want to listen to all this spiritual knowledge. They think it's just a wastage of time. For them, the real purpose of life is to do work hard as much as you can and bring out some technological innovations and inventions and make more money and give and try to give jobs to many people and this and that, and they think this is the goal of life. Nobody is stopping them from doing all these things. It just one has to understand how to keep the consciousness pure while carrying out one's duties, material duties. That's all. But people don't have time for all this. Text 16. Kastam nigudha charasi dvijanam bibharshi sutram katmo avadhuta kasyasi kutratya ihapi kasma shemai naschedasi nota shuklaha. King Rahugana said, O Brahman, you appear to be moving in this world, very much covered and unknown to others. Who are you? Are you a learned Brahman and saintly person? I see that you are wearing a sacred thread. Are you one of those exalted, liberated saints such as Dattatreya and other highly advanced learned scholars? May I ask whose disciple you are? Where do you live? Why have you come to this place? Is your mission in coming here to do good for us? Please let me know who you are. So Maharaj Rahugana was very anxious to receive further enlightenment in Vedic knowledge because he could understand that Jad Bharat belonged to a Brahmin family, either by disciplic succession or by birth in a Brahmin dynasty. As stated in the Vedas, Tad Vijnanartham sa Guru Meva Bigachet. Rahugana was accepting Jad Bharat as a guru. But a guru must prove his position not only by wearing a sacred thread, but by advancing knowledge in spiritual life. It's also significant that Rahugana asked Jad Bharat which family he belonged to. There are two types of families, one according to dynasty and the other according to disciplic succession. In either way, one can be enlightened. The word Shukla refers to a person in the mode of goodness. If one wants to receive spiritual knowledge, he must approach a bona fide Brahman guru, either in the disciplic succession or in the family of learned Brahmins. And Maharaj Rahugana immediately asked him these questions. Who are you? So means one should not just accept anybody, or just like in English, it says any Tom, Dick, or Harry, a spiritual master. One has to know his qualities, his proper disciplic succession, and other qualities that a guru must have. It's just like even in material sciences, if we have to learn engineering, we're not just going to ask any rickshawala to teach me engineering. No, we'll go to a proper college, proper bona fide, authentic college, and then learn from the teachers over there, the proper curriculum. So, what to speak of spiritual science? So, we should approach a bona fide guru. Naham vishanke surarajavrajan natrayakshashulan yamasya dandan narganya arka somanil vittapasra chanke bhrisham brahmkulavamana. My dear sir, I'm not at all afraid of the thunderbolt of King Indra, nor am I afraid of the serpentine piercing trident of Lord Shiva. I do not care about the punishment of Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, nor am I afraid of fire, scorching sun, moon, wind, nor the weapons of Kubera. Yet I am afraid of offending a Brahman. I'm very much afraid of this. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was instructing Rupa Goswami at the Dashashmedh Ghat in Prayag, he pointed out that very clearly the seriousness of offending a Vaishnava. He compared the Vaishnava aparat to Hathi Mata, a mad elephant. When a mad elephant enters a garden, it spoils all the fruits and flowers. Similarly, if one offends a Vaishnava, he spoils all his spiritual assets. Offending a Brahman is very dangerous, and this was known to Maharaj Rahugana. He therefore frankly admitted his fault. There are many dangerous things: thunderbolts, fire, Yamraj's punishment of Lord Shiva's trident, and so forth. But none is considered as serious as offending a Brahman like Jad Bharat. Why? Because all these weapons, they can only kill the body. They can only kill the body, and one suffers just for one lifetime, or not even for lifetime. Once the body is dead, then that's it. But if one offends a Vaishnava, an exalted and advanced devotee like Jad Bharat, then he has to really suffer, because that, first of all, it puts a stop on his spiritual progress. And secondly, he loses so many things, like we have studied earlier also, opulence, one life, one's age, everything one can lose by offending a Brahman like Jad Bharat. Therefore, Maharaj Rahugana immediately descended from his palanquin and fell flat before the lotus feet of the Brahman Jad Bharat, just to be excused. Tad Brahma Sango Jadvana Niguna Vijnana Virya Vicharasya Para Vachansi Yoga Grathitani Sadhu Nana Kshamante Manasapi Me Bhetum. My dear sir, it appears that the influence of your great spiritual knowledge is hidden. Factually, you are bereft of all material association and fully absorbed in the thought of the Supreme. Consequently, you are unlimitedly advanced in spiritual knowledge. Please tell me why you are wandering around like a dullard. Great saintly person, you have spoken words approved by the yogic process, but it's not possible for us to understand what you have said. Therefore, kindly explain it. Saintly people like Jad Bharat do not speak ordinary words. Whatever they say is approved by the great yogis and those advanced in spiritual life. That's the difference between ordinary people and saintly people. The listener must also be advanced to understand the words of such exalted, spiritually advanced people as Jad Bharat. Bhagavad Gita was spoken to Arjuna, not to others. Lord Krishna especially selected Arjuna for instruction in spiritual knowledge because Arjuna happened to be a great devotee and confidential friend. Bhaktosi me sakha cheti. Similarly, great personalities also speak to the advanced, not to Shudras, Vaishyas, women, or unintelligent men. Sometimes it is very risky to give great philosophical instructions to ordinary people. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for the benefit of the fallen souls of Kali Yuga, has given us a very nice instrument, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. The general mass of people, although Shudra and less, can be purified by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Then they can understand the exalted philosophical statements of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Our Krishna consciousness movement has therefore adopted the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra for the general masses. When people gradually become purified, they are instructed in the lessons of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Materialistic people like Sri Shudra and Dvij Bandhu cannot understand words of spiritual advancement. Yet one can take to the shelter of a Vaishnava, for he knows the art of enlightening even Shudras in the highly elevated subject matter spoken in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So Maharaj Rahugana, of course, he also assuming a humble position, and he understood the position of Jad Bharat, and he's saying, please repeat whatever you said, I didn't understand. So this is what Prabhupada is saying, to understand proper spiritual knowledge, one has to be at that level. And that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he knew in Kali Yuga, everybody is a Shudra, or less than Shudra, in fact. So he said, just chant. Chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and slowly, slowly, slowly one can be purified, and then one can hopefully understand the message of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And then in the last sentence, Prabhupada writes a nice line. One can take to the shelter of a Vaishnava, for he knows the art of enlightening even Shudras in the highly elevated subject matter. So this is where Srila Prabhupada's wonderful contribution comes into picture. He has given this purport which can describe Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Nectar of Devotion, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and other books in such a simple way, simple words that he used, simple sentences, that even Shudras like me can, of course, have no realization, but at least we can understand and try to explain. Otherwise, it was not at all possible. If you read the commentaries by other acharyas, it's very, very difficult. But Srila Prabhupada, he knew our position. He knew who in the world is he preaching to. And very painstakingly, he just didn't sleep at night, and he just translated. He gave his purports. Throughout the night, he would be recording on this dictaphone. And then his followers, they would listen to that and type it up, and then go for editing and the proofreading and the printing, and so many things went on to produce these wonderful books, so that we can at least try to understand what all these shlokas mean. Otherwise, there was no way possible we could understand Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. No way. Just like Prabhupada here is saying, Vaishnava knows the art of enlightening, just like Narad Muni. How he preached to King Prachin Barishad, gave the example of Puranjan, and this and that, and he knew this is how I could preach to him or enlighten him. Or when Narad Muni preached to Valmiki Rishi, he said, okay, you cannot chant Ram, Ram, Rama, Rama, just chant Mara, Mara, Mara. So these elevated Vaishnavas, they know They know how to purify somebody. They know how to bring him back on the path, back home, back to Godhead. So all this, we have to pray to all of them to take shelter of the lotus feet to make further advancement. Otherwise, it's not at all possible. Text 19. Aham cha yogeshwaram atmatattva vidvam muninam paramam gurum vai prashtum pravrittah kimiharanam tat sakshat dharin jnana kalavatirnam. I consider your good self the most exalted master of mystic power. You know the spiritual science perfectly well. You're the most exalted of all learned sages, and you have descended for the benefit of all human society. You have come to give spiritual knowledge, and you are a direct representative of Kapil Dev, the incarnation of God and plenary portion of knowledge. I am therefore asking you, spiritual master, what's the most secure shelter in this world? As Krishna confirms in Bhagavad Gita, of all the yogis, he who abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. Jad Bharat was a perfect yogi. He was formerly the Emperor Bharat Maharaj, and he was now the most exalted personality among learned sages and the master of all mystic powers. Although Jad Bharat was an ordinary living entity, he had inherited all the knowledge given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapil Dev. He could therefore be taken directly as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As confirmed by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his stanzas to the spiritual master, Sakshat Dharitvena Samasta Shastra. An exalted personality like Jad Bharat is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he fully represents the Lord by giving knowledge to others. So, Prabhupada has clarified this. Here he is saying he could be as good as, because he is representing. He is not Krishna, he is not the Supreme Lord, but he is as good as the Supreme Lord. Jad Bharat is herein accepted as a direct representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he was imparting knowledge on behalf of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, Maharaj Rahugana concluded that it was appropriate to ask him about Atma Tattva, the spiritual science. Tad Vijnanartham sa Gurum Meva Abhigachet. This Vedic injunction is also confirmed herein. If anyone is at all interested in knowing the spiritual science, Brahm Jigyasa, he must approach a guru like Jad Bharat. So Jad Bharat, he was self-realized soul, formerly Bharat Maharaj, and gone through so much of tapasya and became self-realized. So perfect person to be approached to learn the science of Atma Tattva, the spiritual science. Also, another thing to note here is, see, so far, Jad Bharat, he did not preach to anybody. He was just doing his service, just minding his business. Whatever his brothers told him to do, he just did. And even though the dacoits came to kill him before Kali and he did not retaliate, Krishna protected him through Bhadrakali. But now he got a chance to preach. So means whenever we have to continue with our services, our sadhana, everything else. And whenever we are ready, in whatever respect, in whatever manner, then Krishna will make the arrangement for us to preach. And other day I read a wonderful statement, and this statement was actually given by a priest, a father in a church, many, I think 100 some years ago. I have to exactly find out the date. And the statement was a very wonderful statement. You should preach whole day, every day. You should preach, or one should preach whole day, every day, and speak only when necessary. So preaching is not just giving big lectures. Preaching is by our behavior, by our compassionate nature also. That's also preaching. And speak only when necessary. So this speaking part also, Krishna will make the arrangement. All we have to do just continue, carry on with the services. And when the time comes, Prabhupada will make arrangement or Krishna will make the arrangement. And they will help us in preaching also. But we have to continue with our services, with our sadhana, with our other services. So I guess I'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments?
Wonderful statement, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mata. Yeah, I know. I really loved it.
Seriously.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare
It's
Krishna.
humble.
Please
Yeah,
accept
very
my.
beautiful. Yes, very beautiful and important explanation you have just shared, that the actual meaning of preaching.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder.
Okay, I just Google searched it. It was Saint Francis who said that, and preach the gospel at all times, and speak only when necessary.
When our behavior is right towards others, and those who stays close to us, they themselves get to learn many things by seeing our behavior itself. Even that is sufficient. I mean, rather than going first to the preach to the wall, if we first learn to correct our own behavior, and I feel like that is more powerful. And this is what you also just shared. So
Yeah, and suppose if we preach and our behavior is not proper, then the preaching will not have any effect even anyway.
exactly.
So yes, behavior is very, very important.
Ideally, it is so it is so common that we tend to see the faults in others, especially in our family members. Suppose we are practicing something that we also want them to be the way we are doing. I mean, we try to sometimes impose on them. As so, so this is a great reminder that first, if we change our habits, behaviors, by default, they will themselves have that kind of positivity to change their nature also, just seeing us.
Yep. And this is what I hear from Shivani Didi all the time. Stop expecting anything from others. Start accepting them.
Yes.
And she explains it very nicely, although I cannot explain it that way. But it's a crux. Too many things to learn, huh?
Yes, Prabhuji. Shivani Didi is very humble. She's so soft. मैं यही हैरान रहती हूँ इतना politely how she talk.
Yeah.
Always she's on a one, it's like एकदम आराम से पानी तैर रहा है धीरे धीरे से. And I just keep listening to her and just मैं यही सोचती रहती हूँ ये कैसे इतना softly बोल सकते हैं, कैसे इतना धीरे धीरे हर चीज बोलती हैं.
And she lives that way also.
हाँ वो दिखता है. It's not that she's pretending कि
Yeah.
वहाँ बैठ के she's मतलब she's into it basically. वो उनका है ऐसा कुछ.
Yep.
Sometimes people गद्दी से उतरते ही अपने नॉर्मल उसमें आ जाते हैं, but she मतलब वो ऐसा एक वेव देती है कि she is like that.
Yeah. Very, very simple person. And they all are in Brahm Kumaris. I have met Dadi Janki, Dadi Gulzar. All are same way. Very simple, very, very simple. And always ready to help
Yeah,
and serve others.
great souls.
Yep, yep. Chalo, I guess we can stop here. See you all. Have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Jai Krishna Prabhuji.
Jai Srila